Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. All right. So, where should I share it? Over here?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
All right. So, Hare Krishna. Let me just close that link for myself. So, we are on the 13th chapter, has around 35 verses. And last time we discussed the acronym for this chapter as WISE. W stands for the questions, wise questions or inquiries made by Arjuna. In essence, this chapter begins with 6 questions asked by Arjuna. What is Kshetra? Who is Kshetragya? What is Prakriti? Who is Purusha? What is Jnanam? And what is Gniyam? So Lord Shri Krishna begins to answer about Kshetra and Kshetragya and within the first 7 verses. First verse is the question, so which means second verse onward there is an answer. So Lord Shri Krishna defines Kshetra is a field of activity. An example is given to draw a parallel is of to an agricultural land. The farmer grows the crop in the agricultural land. Similarly, the body becomes a kshetra by which we get karmic reactions. So just like a farmer is a knower of his field, similarly, Atma is a knower of the body, kshetra. The kshetragya becomes the soul. However, Lord Shri Krishna says in the 3rd verse, Arjuna, well, there is not only one kshetragya, there are 2 kshetragya. One is known as super soul. Just like the king who knows about all the agricultural lands, similarly, super soul knows about all the other living entities, all the kshetras. So, like that, kshetragya has been established. Then, what is a kshetragya is made up of? What it constitutes of? 24 elements. Lord Shri Krishna talks about it. And in the Prabhupada course, Taittiriya Upanishad talks about 5 levels of consciousness: Anamaya, Manamaya, Jnanamoy, Vijnanamoy, Anandmoy, like that. Those consciousness we discussed about it, and also the 24 elements we discussed. Like this, what is Kshetra and Kshetragya was described. Then comes the second part of discussion, which is items of knowledge. So, in conditioned nature, let me put it this way, I'll come back to this topic again. 13th chapter in general is the most complicated subject matter. It is described by our acharyas. In fact, Srila Prabhupada makes a point in the purport in the beginning. The question raised by Arjuna here forms the fundamental constituents of the Vedic literatures. These are the subject matter for which we have Shruti Shastras. They establish or they answer these fundamental questions or these 6 questions. And they're very complicated to understand because there are different levels of understanding. One of the biggest misunderstanding that the reader or the student of Vedic scripture gets is the Kshetragya, which means the soul and super soul are one and same, but that is not what it is. We'll come to that section today where it becomes a little more confusing. How do we know Kshetragya, which means the soul and super soul are different? We'll discuss that in a short while. So the first Kshetra and Kshetragya is described, then comes the items of knowledge. So in a conditioned nature, I believe all of us would agree, the living entity is quite attached to the field, Kshetra, which means we are very attached to the body. In fact, so much so that we identify with the body. In fact, the height of ignorance so much that we don't even know that Kshetra and Kshetragya are 2 different things. Nonetheless, even if you know or not know, we are quite attached to Kshetra, just like farmer is too attached to his agricultural land. Now, to walk the path of transcendence or to liberate oneself from this attachment to the field of action, which is the body, how does it happen? Then we require a knowledge. Lord Shri Krishna says, with the help of with the sword of transcendental knowledge, cut off this attachment. This is subject matter of 15th chapter. We'll see that. So knowledge is required to detach oneself from this field of action, from this body. And that is a discussion of verse number 8 to verse number 12. that is called as items of knowledge, 20 items of knowledge. Now, when we talk about knowledge in general, how we have got trained up in today's world, we consider knowledge to be equivalent to information. The more information I possess, the more I have a power of recall, etc. It means I have knowledge. That is not the understanding of spiritual knowledge, because we're talking about spiritual knowledge to detach oneself from the body. So the very first quality of spiritual knowledge is humility, and that leads to character. So I believe we would have discussed last time about character versus caliber. So spiritual knowledge is not about caliber, which means it's not dependent on if you have memorized 700 verses Bhagavad Gita, 80,000 verses of Bhagavatam or not. If in case somebody has have done it, which means indeed he's greatly advanced spiritually, that's not necessarily the fact. So advancement in spiritual knowledge depends on dash dash dash. So what it depends on, and that is what the items of knowledge. Well, I cannot give an answer, so there's no point of me asking a question to all of you right now. So advancement in spiritual knowledge depends on your character. Therefore, if you look at the items of knowledge, what Krishna begins with, I'm quoting the 8th verse. Amanitvam madambitvam himsa shantirajamam acharya pasanam saucham stharyam atma vinigraha, self-controlled, saucham, cleanliness, humility, pridelessness, forgiveness, all those truthfulness, simplicity, etc. So it all depends on character. So our spiritual development can be measured in terms of how we have cultivated saintly disposition. What kind of saintly qualities we have cultivated or developed over a period of time, that is a measurement or yardstick of a measurement of success in spiritual life. And the most important quality of all that is described as Mai cha ananya yogena bhaktir avya vicharini. That's verse number 11th, first line. If somebody takes to the devotional service of the Lord, he but naturally develops all this wonderful quality. Yasyasa bhaktir bhagavati akinchana. Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse by Prahlad Maharaj. So we discussed all this also last time. So this answers jnanam. What is knowledge? So these constitutes of knowledge, everything outside of is ignorance. Now we come to the fourth question, that is gneyam. Gneyam means what is the object of knowledge, what to be known. That is answered in verse number 13 to verse number 19. What is to be known is, know the difference between soul and super soul. Sambandha Gyan means to understand who am I, who is the Supreme Personality Godhead, and what is our relationship. That's the subject matter which is discussed in text number 13. So that's a quick recap of what we discussed last time. 13 to 19 verses extremely important, and if we just simply go through the verses in translation, we may miss out some important point. I'll just go back and quickly do a quick recap of what are the qualities of Atma and Paramatma discussed, and what discussion we had last time briefly, because last time we kind of rushed through it because it was almost the time, and then we'll take our discussion from verse number 19 for today. All right, kindly bear with me. Recap always is not so bad. 1 second. Yeah, that should be the presentation. And soul and super soul. Where is the zoom here? Yeah, correct. I believe it should be visible for everyone. Okay, great. This is one of the very, very important discussions. Of course, this set of verses and the coming of set of verses was extremely important in terms of personal application. Let's take a look at it quickly. So what are the qualities mentioned? In text number 13, it is mentioned Anadi, beginningless, Matparam, under my shelter, and is beyond material cause and effect. That's the nature of soul, or features of soul. And what is the benefit of knowing this knowledge? Lord Shri Krishna says, one who knows this knowledge becomes blissful, happy. Now, what are the features of super soul? Verse number 14 mentions it. Before we get into it, just a little bit take a look at Sanskrit, because all the game of Sanskrit, the word jugglery and confusion rise because of that. I'm going to touch upon a little bit of Sanskrit in the discussion today. Let's take a quick look at it. So, Gneyam yattat pravakshyami, reading the 13th verse. Gneyam yattat pravakshyami yad jnatva amritam ashnute. What you get? Amritam ashnute result. Anadi matparam brahma nasat nasad Uchate, like that. So this is the nature of the soul. Gnayam yattat pravakshami. I'll tell you that knowledge by which you will attain amritam ashnute. And that is what? The nature of the soul. Now, text number 14. Hare Krishna. Sorry, Prabhu, my phone. You can receive it. Text number 14. Sarvatah pani padam tat sarvato akshishiro mukham sarvata shruti malloke sarvam avratya tishtati. So here the omnipotency and all pervading, what do you call it? Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. Omnipotent, omnipresent quality are described here in text number 14. So omnipotent, he can accept our offering, he can hear to our prayers. See all of that? No, etc. 1 second. This is my personal number. Okay. And then is all pervading. Sarvato Akshi Shiro Mukham, like that is described here. We talked about all this thing, what it means, all pervading ascent. So the question that we raised after that was, oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu, sorry, yeah, presentation. Leave it. Better. So, how to understand the object of knowledge? Otherwise, you can leave me with presentation here. Okay. How to understand the object of knowledge? Somehow or other, we discuss if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, then the entire mission of human's life is fulfilled, like that. And then the further object of knowledge about supersoul comes from text number 15, where the contradictory qualities of supersoul are described in the 15th verse onwards. Sarvendriya gunavasam sarvendriya vivarjitam. You know, he has senses, but he is without senses. Asaktam sarva brashchayava, he is a maintainer of all living entity, but he is detached. Nirgunam guna bhokta cha. He is the master of the modes, but he is above the modes. So I'll just going to run through it. We have discussed this yesterday, what it means. So he has senses, but he is without senses. The reason I'm discussing this again, because this is where lies the confusion of understanding it. This is where all this Mayavadis and all those kind of, different spiritual understanding comes up. So what it means exactly? Krishna doesn't have material senses. Krishna doesn't have sense means he does not have material senses. He is beyond our sense perception. However, still, just to accept our service, Lord manifests in his deity form for our benefits. When our senses are purified through spiritual process, then we can see the Lord as he is, like that. We discuss all the examples for it. What it means that he is maintainer, yet he is detached, which means he is maintainer, we depend entirely on him. 15th chapter, verse number 12, 13, 14, 15 talks about it. We'll discuss how Krishna is the maintainer of our gross body, subtle body, and super soul. Maintainer. We develop, now we discuss about, second part we discussed yesterday, last time was, Krishna is the maintainer, the Supreme Lord is the maintainer. And I often say this, we are the follower of Supreme Personality Godhead, so we should also kind of imbibe some of his qualities in terms of dealing with the material nature. So that comes over here. So when we try to provide for somebody, we naturally become attached. We develop expectations. But the Lord is detached. What it means? Hare Krishna. The Lord does not, detachment means the Lord does not interfere in Jiva's free will. He is unaffected by Jiva's activities, yet he always accompanies Jiva in the material world as super soul. Lord doesn't interfere in Jiva's free will, knowing the fact that whatever it is at the end of the day, he's still going to do what he wants to do it. And the evidence is that, we already kind of disowned the Supreme Personality Godhead, gave up our relationship with him. We're wandering in this world for so long. We kind of misuse. Now to expect from this living entity that he would become obedient for all the time to somebody is, I guess, too much to expect from our subordinate, like that. And we discuss about subordinate and senior relationship in that. Then we raise a question. So what does it mean by responsible caregiving versus pampering? When we get into the maintenance, or we think, I have a dependent, I need to provide for him. So what's, how do we do that? There could be one responsible caregiving and there could be a pampering. That was a discussion. These are some of the points which I'm not going to get into right now. And then we talked about there are two ways of maintaining. One is caregiving and second is pampering. And we also talked here in regards of Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Lord expands himself, Lord appears himself, Lord, Brahma comes from the Lord, Sankrishna expands himself, Lord Shiva. But when it comes to maintenance, it is only done by Vishnu. I mean, well, Vishnu could have done the task of destruction and also creation, but why he did that? We discussed all that, like that. Anyways, these are some of the things we discuss about it. So then comes the next verse, I believe, right? 16th verse. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charameva cha sukshmatvatad avigniyam durastham chantike chatat. So he is master of the modes. Sorry, this was the third feature from the 15th. He's a master of the modes, yet he is above the mode, which means he's swarat. Laws of nature are not applicable to him. An example of a movie, the role play by the actors and the director, like that. Then comes verse number 16, 17. The qualities of super soul. He is all pervasive, beyond sense perception, undivided, like that. And then we give an example. How undivided? Om Purnam Madha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Invocation, which is quoted by our acharyas in Ishopanishad. The complete units manifest from the complete whole, yet the complete whole remains as it is, like that. So identity of object of knowledge, super soul. This was kind of discussed in our up to the 18th verse, like that. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifest. His knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, text number 18, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. This is close, similar to 15th chapter, verse number 15, Sarvasachaham Hiti Sannivishtu, like that. So let's take a look at the last paragraph of the purport of 18th verse. He is situated in everyone's heart as a supreme controller. The supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere, and this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two nodes of the field of activity. The soul and the super soul must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Shvetashtar Upanishad, Sarvasya Prabhum Ishanam Sarvasya Sharanam Bhrad. That Supreme Personality Godhead Super Soul is the Prabhu or Master of all living entities. Therefore, he is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Super Soul and individual souls are always different. And now we come to the 19th verse, like that. How to understand the Supreme Personality, how to understand the subject matter. Conclusion and the result, text number 19. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam niyam choktam samasataha madbhakta etad vijnaya. Who can understand it? Understand this? Madbhakta. Very clearly Krishna says, Madbhakta etad vijnaya. Jnana and Vijnana. Jnana is knowledge, Vijnana is realization. Madbhavaya upapadyate. Thus the field of activities, the body, kshetra, knowledge, jnanam, the knowable, niyam, have been summarily described by me. Only my devotee, madbhakta etat vijnaya. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Very, very important purport. Let's take a look at the purport. Anyone would like to read the purport? Mother Leela Nandini, yes, probably. All right, start reading.
The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called Vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate stage, these three items become one, but the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge means understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7, beginning from Mahabodhani and continuing through Chetana Dhriti, analyze the material elements and certain manifestation of the symptoms of life. This combined to form the body or the field of activities. And verses 8 through 12, from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the supersoul. Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Matparam and continuing Trihridi Sarvasya Vistidam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord or the Super Soul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, that is the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the super soul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So for these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired result. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Going back to the presentation once again, some key lessons from this section. Apparent contradictions in Lord's pastimes are reconciled once we understand the nature of the Lord. So as we saw, there were contradictory qualities of the Supreme Personality Godhead, particularly what was described here as the contradictory qualities of the Super Soul. It can only be once we, if we understand the nature of the Lord, then we can understand the nature of his pastime. Just like why did Lord Ram had to kill a Shudra, or why did Lord Krishna had to get married to 16,000 red queens, etc., etc., for which people raise this question. First of all, we need to understand the nature of the Lord. He is beyond the moral matter nature, etc., which has been described here. Next, we learned here that it is not a subject matter for endeavors and research that we can understand the Supreme Personality Godhead. We cannot understand. And the matter of fact is, there are so many spiritual organizations and spiritual teachers in India alone, and yet not everyone really comes to a similar conclusion, understanding. I mean, look at it. 19th verse, in the third line, Krishna clearly says, I mean, it doesn't really require much of Sanskrit knowledge, but what does Krishna says? Madbhakta eta vijnaya. Who can understand? My devotee can know what is being described here. So that's the point. By our endeavors, we cannot, like that. So how to understand the Lord, as we saw here, as well as in the 20 items of knowledge. To understand the Lord, we can only understand by his mercy. How to attain his mercy? We have to take Acharya Upasanam, take shelter of his devotee. Tadvidhi Pranipatena. Again, the principle of Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, Lord Shri Krishna says, only my devotees can understand these topics. The topics of Kshetrajna, soul and super soul, are two distinct, like that. The example is given, Prabhupada quotes as in the purport, particularly between 17 and 19, the two birds sitting on a tree. We also see in the second chapter, this particular example is given. As you see, a beautiful picture upon the here. There are two birds sitting on the branch of a tree, which is compared to the body. One bird, if you see in the picture carefully, is sitting quietly, whereas the other bird looks to be a little agitated. Any guesses? Who is the soul and super soul here? Interesting picture, isn't it? Any guesses? Which one are you? The one who is sitting seems to be relaxed, or the one who seems to be enthusiastic? Hare Krishna. ये क्या चल रहा है? कोई रेलवे स्टेशन पे है क्या? Okay. So, all right. I'm seeing the mixed responses. I don't know what you exactly mean, but the point is, as you can see, Krishna is below that peaceful sitting bird. That is super soul, and the one who is agitated is the representation of fear is of individual soul like that. That's the point is described. All right. So I'll close this presentation and we'll go to the next presentation. We will start for today's discussion now. And today's discussion begins from verse number, verse number 20. So like this, Hare Krishna. So this is the Prabhu presentation. Okay. So we are on the 26th session now, and we have already discussed the acronym. This wise questions, all has been described already, items of knowledge, soul and super soul, we just did it. Now comes the last section of this chapter from verse number 22, verse number 35. And what are the two pending questions that needs to be addressed? Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Gneyam, Purusha, Prakriti. Purusha. Who is Purusha? Who is Prakriti? And that is how it begins with. So this chapter concludes with the description of the final two terms, Prakriti and Purusha. The Jiva desires to control, enjoy matter Prakriti. And it is this enjoying spirit that binds him to the material world like this. So in this 15 shlokas, there are a few subject matters that we're going to take a look at. First, who is the enjoyer? Prabhu presentation, yeah. Second, why do bad things happen to good people? Like that. Third, where is my freedom? Fourth, three doers. Fifth, what is the purpose of material creation? Fantastic purpose for Srila Prabhupada. This is just from his Prabhupada purpose only. And the sixth key theme, if you want to highlight, is the vision of transcendentalists. In other words, in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna explains, or in this particular section, how to understand the position of Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, like that. And then finally concludes the vision of a transcendentalist towards all this. So before we begin into this section of who is Purusha, what is Prakriti? Prakriti is enjoyed, Purusha is an enjoyer. So all of you are practicing devotees for a while, for a long time. You've read Srila Prabhupada books. If I ask you, who is Purusha? Just to do a quick little one question exercise. Who is Purusha? What will you say? So I say, let me ask you to raise your hand. So there is only one Purusha, that is Krishna. Is that correct? Or is there two Purushas, three Purushas like that? So it is Krishna or the Supreme Lord. He is. Then who am I? Am I semi-Purusha? Half Purusha? No Purusha? Or Prakriti. So how many of you agree we are Prakriti? Is that okay? Anyone else has anything to say? Anything else to say? Because there's something going to be tricky right now, what we're going to read from the 20th verse. Okay. Okay. So you say I'm Prakriti. Let's take a look what Krishna says about you. Well, Krishna doesn't necessarily say you are Prakriti. Let's take a look at it. Well, he says, but we'll come to it. I'd like to quote, every one of us in this condition, life and situation, we assume ourselves to be the enjoyer. Chitraketu Maharaj, there are some very fabulous verses or statements by him in the 6th canto, which I like to share and quote here before we delve into the subject matter. Let's take a look. These are some of my favorite verses from the section of 6th canto. And he says, Samsara chakra etasmin jantur ajnana mohitaha brahmayam sukham cha dukkham cha bhunkate sarvatra sarvada. What is Chitraketu Maharaj is saying? He says, Samsara chakra etasmin jantur ajnana. What is Samsara chakra? Janma mrityu jara vyadhi. This is samsara chakra. To take birth, die again, take birth, die again. That is samsara chakra etasmin. He's put into the samsara chakra etasmin. Why? Jantur ajnana mohita. Because of his ignorance, because of his illusion, he's put into the situation. And what happens? Brahmayam sukham cha dukkham cha. Brahmaya is brahmate. He's wandering. Sometimes, like going up and going down. Sometimes he gets happiness, sometimes he gets distress. Brahmayam sukham cha dukkham cha bhunkate sarvatra sarvada. Like this, Bhunkati means enjoys both suffering and misery, or receives suffering and misery, sarvatra, sarvada, at all time, at all places. There's no exception to it. Chitraketu Maharaj, 6th canto, 17th chapter, verse 18. Deluded by ignorance, the living and born of the forest of the material world, enjoying the happiness and distress resulting from his past deeds everywhere and at all times. Then he says something very interesting further about the nature of life in this world. What is the nature of life in this world? Guna pravaha etasmin Kashapa nu anugraha kasvargo naraka va kim sukham dukhameva. We get too much attached and entangled with the idea of happiness and distress to different degrees. Here Chitraketu Maharaj is saying, what is the question of curse or a blessing, happiness or distress? Gunha prabhava etasmin, when you are kind of stuck into an ocean, when you're tossed again and again by the waves on the ocean, where is the question of having any blessing or any curse? It doesn't matter, because you're suffering at all times. Gunha prabhava etasmin, you're being tossed under the waves of the motion of material nature. Kashata kano anugraha. What is the value of curse? Konu anugraha. And what is the value of blessing? Swarga naraka kova. What is the advantage of being in swarga or naraka? Kim sukham dukkham. Similarly, what happiness, distress? In other words, at all times you are suffering. Okay, I've not had translation, but that's a translation about it. Okay, so let's begin with our first. I'm going to do it into sections. This 6 sections that we made here. Let's begin. Who is the enjoyer? Somehow, somewhere we have this deep rooting. I am the enjoyer. I'm supposed to enjoy. Let's take a look at it. So let me go with my presentation first, and then we'll come to the verses. What is the difficulty in believing I am the enjoyer? Can't I be the enjoyer? Because this whole misunderstanding only leads us to compete with the Supreme Personality Godhead. So let me ask, what is the difficulty? I have a photo of here of a gentleman. I don't know how many of you would know. Probably some of you would know. Anyone knows who is this person here who's kind of seems to be crying? I've intentionally posted this kind of a photo here. His name is Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Nokia. Nokia CEO. Nokia at one point in time, let's say, in the first decade, not first decade, the last decade of 20th century and the first decade of 21st century, the Nokia was the company, that whole world looked up to, was the biggest mobile manufacturing unit of the world, and the whole economy of Finland was based on this Nokia company. Somehow, because of the introduction of Android operating system and Apple's touchscreen phone, Nokia went out of market. By 2013, Nokia had to fire around 25,000 employees, and finally, at the end of 2013, the company got sold off or purchased by Microsoft at 1/10 or maybe less than that valuation, this market valuation from the previous year, which was a 50-60 billion company, was sold off for somewhere $7-8 billion, or maybe less than that, like that. And at that point of time, this is a snapshot from his kind of a press conference for the investors and the public at large. And he said, well, we never did anything wrong. We just lost the market. We just couldn't keep in the market. So the reason I've got his photo here is they were ruling the market. They were the top of the world. There was no other company. And imagine being a CEO of a company who you brought it to the top company of the whole world, and your product is used literally by everyone. I'm pretty sure all of us here would have used, among so many brands of smartphone, we would have definitely used Nokia smartphone for sure. Am I correct? 100%. Each one of us. That was his brand. That was a thing. But yet he could not maintain his position. Why? What's the difficulty? Let's take a look at it. First, resources are limited. Even if you want to enjoy for all the time to come, you cannot, because resources are limited. There's going to be a competition, and because of competition, it's going to lead to conflict, competition and exploitation. Okay, yeah, and cannot enjoy it forever. Even if we have unlimited resources, we cannot enjoy it forever because we have limited senses. And it again leads to frustration and dissatisfaction. So, how to really enjoy? So, this is from fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Narad Muni, another very important verse, and he says, Yatha tarormurnischanena trapyanti taskanda bhujopashakha प्राणोपहारच चैतेन्द्रियाणां तथैव सर्वारणमच्युतेच्छया यथा तरोर्मुल्लिच्छनेन. When you water the roots of the tree, the whole tree is nourished. The twigs, the leaves, the branches, the fruits, the trunk, everything is nourished when you water the root. So, as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotion service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, how do we really enjoy? By serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by watering the root of the tree. An example, two examples. One is the watering the root of the tree or feeding the stomach, and the whole body gets nourishment. All right, now let's take a look at the verses. Hopefully, we'll have a better connected here, better understanding here. But some still, so there will be some catch here. We'll take a look. Let's start with the verses first. Text number 20. Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi Anadi Ubhavapi Vikaramsha Gunamschaiva Vidhi Prakrti Sambhavan. Let's look at the last line, then we'll come to the first line. Vikarams, the third line. Vikarams means vikar, matlab transformations. Cha Gunamschaiva. All the transformations that happens is because of gunams, because of the modes of matter nature. Vidhi means to know. Prakriti Sambhavan. It all happens because of material nature. All the transformation. Transformation of what? Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi Anadi Ubhavapi. Anadi means Anadikal, beginningless. Vidhi means to know. Vidhi Anadi Ubhavapi. You should know Ubhav means both are beginningless. What both? Which is described in the first line. Prakritim Purusham Chaiva. Both Prakriti and Purusha are beginningless. First thing is both Prakriti and Purusha are beginningless, and the second thing which is mentioned is Vikaramsha Gunam Shaiva Vidhi Prakriti Sambhava. All the transformations, all the changes that happen, it happens because of Prakriti Sambhavan. So what do you make of it, the statement? Which means all the different incarnations that appear in this creation happens because of Prakriti Sambhavan. Is that a right kind of a inference? Hare Krishna. Are we on the same page, or am I making it a little complicated for all of you? I'm just going with Sanskrit here right now. Is it making sense or no? Look at the word. You all said we are Prakriti and Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Then what this verse says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi, no, Anadi, they are beginningless. Both Prakriti and Purusha Anadi, beginningless. Vikaramsha Guna Chaiva, and they all undergo transformation because of Prakriti Sambhavan. So Purusha also undergo transformation because of Prakriti Sambhavan, because of the modes of material nature, which means all the incarnation that appears because of modes of material nature. Sounds like Mayavad, right? That's what Mayavadi says. All the forms of the Lord that appear in the world is nothing because of the combination of different modes of material nature. They appear like this. But that is not what is being discussed here. So Purusha here refers to Jivatma. Now, why Purusha here refers to Jivatma? I'll establish that in a short while. Let's take a look at the purport now. The purport is very interesting here. Okay, who would like to read the purport? Madanjana, your hand is up. Please read the first paragraph. Now, let me first of all explain you why it is said Jiva is Purusha. Just like Jiva is said to be Kshetragya, the knower of the body, similarly, Jiva is also said to be Purusha, a little Purusha. He is a little enjoyer, like that. How this Purusha does not indicate the Supreme Personality Godhead, we'll look at the verses ahead and we'll come to that understanding. Start reading the first paragraph, please.
Hare Krishna. The knowledge given in this chapter can be understood. The body, the field of activities, and the knowers of the body, both the individual soul and the super soul. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha or the living entity.
Hare Krishna. That's all. Okay? The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha. There is a little Purusha here. All right, next paragraph. Both material nature and living entity.
Material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities. But
all
the
right.
living entities.
What is the proof that how Prakriti and Jivatma are both are the energies of the Lord? And because the energy of the Lord, they existed before the creation. What exists after the creation is a transformation, which is produced because of the Prakriti. So, the reason I'm emphasizing this point, now you understand what this verse makes sense. So, Prakritim, Purusham, Vidhi, Anadi, they are both beginningless. How they are both beginningless? Because the energies of the Lord. What reference do you have? Any thing that says that yes, both the energies of the Lord? 7th chapter, verse number 4 and 5. Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayu Kamano Buddhirevacha, right? Aparyantam is to Anyam, like that, which Krishna discussed about. So, yes, this makes sense. This is correct like that. Okay, continue, Mother.
The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities. But the living entities are of the superior energy. Both the living entities and material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it was manifested by the agency of Mahatattva. Similarly, the living entities are also in him, and because they are conditioned, they are averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky.
All right. Because they are averse, therefore they are not allowed to enter the spiritual sky. And their nature has been discussed about it. But with the coming forth of material nature, the same conditioned and averse living entities are given a chance. So this here Prabhupada brings up the question, what is the purpose of material creation? Muli Prabhu, please read ahead. What is the purpose of material creation? But with the coming forth of material nature.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entity is originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within the material nature. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come in contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by this material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence.
Mana Shashtani Indriyani Sthani Karshati. You know, like that. They are always struggling. Great struggle for existence. Go ahead.
But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so very important verse. So this Purusha here mentioned, it is not about the Supreme Personality, it is a little Purusha. How it is little Purusha, we'll see in the Sanskrit only. Again, ahead it will be mentioned, but through the very easy explanation of Srila Prabhupada, that makes it clear. Now the question arises, because of Prakriti Sambhavan, because of Prakriti, all the transformation, all the changes, different kinds of body that I get is because of Prakriti. So who is responsible? There is something called as victim mentality, right? But according to Bhagavad Gita, particularly the next verse, this whole concept of victim mentality is hoax. Victimization does not exist. To say I am victim means somebody else is responsible for my situation. But text number 21 clarifies, no, nobody is responsible for your situation except for you. Text number 21. Karya karana katatve hetu prakritiruchyate purushaha sukha dukkhanam bhoktratve heturuchyate. Very, very important verses, fantastic verses. Okay. Karya karana kartatve. Karya means karya, the effect. Karana means cause. Kartatve, in the matter of creation. Hetuhu, who's responsible for it? You can say instrument or responsible. Prakritir, it is material nature. Who's responsible for this cause and effect? Purushaha sukha dukkhanam bhoktratve heturuchyate. So actions and reactions, Prakriti is responsible. But for sukha and dukkha, living entity is responsible. Who is responsible for sukha and dukkha? Living entity. Okay, let me ask this question to you. If actions are not performed by me, actions are performed by material nature, karya karana kartatve, then how can I be held responsible for my suffering when I have not done anything? Is that question making sense? Arey, you should not type answer. If you type answer, then there's no question of asking a question to others. We have said, right? Raise your hands. So this is like Mayavadis who don't speak, but they write and speak. So what is this? If you type in, then what's the question purpose of me asking a question to others? All right, make sure you don't do that again, huh? Yes, because we desired it. That's the answer here. We don't allow others to think. We should get the chance to think. Okay, let's take a look at fantastic proposal again. We should read the whole paragraph. It's beautiful. Okay, Mother Chintamani, please start reading from the 4th line of the purport. Where are you? Yeah, there you are. Go ahead.
The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000, 84 lakhs different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everything is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasure for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now the sum total, body and instrument senses, are offered by material nature. And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering.
Hare Krishna. We can just 1 second pause here. Then we can continue. What a profound way of explaining things. We're saying you are put into a different residential quarters. 1 BHK studio, 2 BHK, 3 BHK, 4 BHK, referring to the body of a dog, a hog, human being, bird, etc. And the enjoyment and the suffering is actually pertains to the body. For example, a human form or human body has an access, has the availability of, has the opportunity to access high levels of happiness. When it comes to, let's say, animals, aha nidra bhaya methunam, that's it, because it is limited by the body. So all over this, this whole happiness and distress is all pertaining to the body. That is what Prabhupada is saying. Now, how we are put into this body is because of our desires and activities. And the activities are produced because we desired. Ultimately, the root cause is desired. 5th chapter, verse number 11, 12, 13 talks about it. And that's what Prabhupada is saying. They are put into different residential quarters. And accordingly, they get suffering and happiness. Please continue, Mother.
Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature.
All right. Please mark it for yourself. Highlight this. The body is not yours. The body belongs to Prakriti. So you cannot control the body. We don't control the body. Think about it. What aspect of body do I control? Okay, you may say, Prabhuji, you're raising your hand, you're moving your hand, some things like this. But according to medical science, we only have 5% control on our body. 95% the functioning of the body are beyond our control. And if we understand the science behind it, we'll really develop gratitude for the Lord. Thank God, apne ko control nahi diya. If the Lord would have given the control to us, we would have been really miserable situation. So what is the point? Once he plays in a particular body, comes under the control of nature, because the body being matter acts according to the laws of nature. None of us control our digestion, our nature's call, our filtration, of the air by the lungs or kidney, etc., or the pumping of the blood. So many activities happening. It is all done according to the laws of nature. That's the point. Fantastic. Please go ahead, Mother.
At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law.
Any example? At that point, living entity is no. Any example that comes, you cannot change the law. Example is, if you put into this body, you cannot make it deathless. Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, they all wanted the boon of becoming immortal. And Brahmaji said, even while I am not immortal, how can I make you immortal? So as long as we have metal body, it is going to go through the transformations. There's going to be birth, there is going to be growth, there's going to be maintenance, there's going to be old age, there's going to be a death. So it cannot be changed. Just like law of gravity is there, the traffic laws are there, these are the laws of the nature, it cannot be changed. So all those medical research which is happening out to make a man deathless one day, we should share this purport to them. Well, nothing going to make change for them anyways, but that's the point here. Mother, continue.
Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. That is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 as follows. Dva Suparna Sajuya Sakhyaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the super soul or Paramatma.
Hare Krishna. So this is something which needs to become a part of your study. Your study means should be compulsory taught the laws of nature. We talk about different laws of the state, but we don't talk about the laws of the material nature. Now, so why a living entity becomes like this? Forgetful of his nature, forgetful of the laws of material nature, and he becomes more and more entangled into it. Why? Text number 22. Purusha Prakrti stohi bhunkate Prakrti jan gunan karanam guna sangasya sad asat yoni janmashu. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, Kapil Dev speaks to Mother Devahuti and he says, Karmana deva netrena jantu deha utpatte. So Karmana deva netrena. So based on your past activities, deva netrena, and decided by the Devata, you're based on your past activity, decision is made by the Devata and you're given the next body. Jantu deha utpatte. Similarly, this was talks about Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. How do you get different yonis? How a living entity? Look at the last line. Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. How does a living entity gets different yonis, different bodies? If there is a law governing that each body will function a certain way, then there has to be a law which governs who gets what body. And what is that law? The first 3 lines talks about Purusha Prakrti stohi Bhunkate Prakriti Janmuna. Till that time, living entity is bent on exploiting the material nature or enjoying the material nature. Till that time, Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. Till that time, Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. Karanam Guna Sangasya. Translation: the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with the good and evil among various species. So what needs to be changed? Okay, let me ask this question to all of you. How do we get rid of this bodies now? How do we get rid of this? How do we get freed from the laws of material nature? Okay, let me put, yeah. How do we get freed from the laws of material nature? Any quick thoughts? Because right now we are controlled by the laws of material nature. Why we are controlled by the laws of material nature? Because we are sitting in the vehicle which is directed by the laws of material nature. So you may say, how to get free from the material nature? Get free from the body. But you get free from the body, you become a Bhutta, Preta, because you just got rid of gross body, not the subtle body. So how do we come out of it? Yes, Mother Kamalika, go ahead.
Yes, by attaining the Brahma Bhuta state, by practicing devotional service.
By practicing. Okay, by practicing. But what is the beginning thing that happen? To practice that, what needs to change? Hare Krishna. Yes, Mother Jyoti or Desh Deepak Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, is it by taking the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master?
Fantastic. And by taking shelter of, but what will happen by taking shelter of bona fide, Guru? What is supposed to happen?
Inquiring from him and serving him.
Inquiring, what will it lead to? See, there is some problem with us. We need to understand that. And that problem has to go away. What is that problem?
The false ego gets dissolved.
Okay, you're quite close to it. The problem is with our conception. What is our conception? When a living entity wakes up in the morning, he looks around and surveys the whole world thinking that how can I exploit today? That's a conception. And that conception needs to be changed. Unless this conception is changed from exploitation to serving others, we continue in Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. And for that, Srila Prabhupada gives a beautiful answer in the purport, like this. So first part of the paragraph talks about Yoni Janmashu, how he gets different kinds of bodies. Now the next part, Prabhupada talks about how he's put into such different bodies and how to come out of it. All right. Who would like to read the second paragraph? Shashank Prabhu, please read.
From second paragraph?
Yeah, second paragraph. First paragraph I've already summarized. Go to the second.
How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, able 3 material modes and become situated in a transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another, because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authority.
Please mark these 2 lines. But he has to change that conception. that change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. I guess you might have heard from me. I often say that what is our service as preachers? Our only role is to create an opportunity for others to hear Krishna Katha. We are not the one who's speaking Krishna Katha. We're not ready for that. We have to just create an opportunity so others can hear. Even if, let's say, we are speaking Krishna Katha, it is only to bring them to that level so that they can hear what Srila Prabhupada has to speak, or those pure advanced soul has to speak, is to connect them there. That is what the whole culture, that's the whole idea of preaching there. Continue, Prabhu.
The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature. And gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, he proportionately releases his eternal blissful life.
Hare Krishna. Fine. Are you all with me on this? Let me just do a quick recap. Text number 20 talks about Prakriti and Purusha. And because of the union of Prakriti and Purusha, all the transformation occurs in this mental creation. This Purusha is the little Purusha, not the original Purusha, like that. Then who is responsible for our situation? Victim mentality? No, there is nothing called as victimhood. I am responsible for my situation. Karya, Karna, Kartatve, all the cause and effect in terms of actions are performed by material nature. But whereas I am responsible for happiness and distress that I undergo, why? Because I desired it. And the second point is, according to our past desires and past action, in whichever body we are put into it, the body is the product of material nature. If it is a product of material nature, it is governed by the laws of material nature. It is beyond us to control anything. So as soon as the living entity is put into a particular body, Prabhupada says residential quarter, it has, it will get its quota of happiness and distress accordingly. Text number 22, how to get rid of this residential quarters, or how to get rid of this material body. Or in other words, we can say how to get rid of it. And first of all, why do we get different kinds of residential quarters? Who decides? If my body functions according to the laws of nature, then is there a law who decides how do I get my next body? Yes. Sad asat yoni janmashu. Purusha prakriti sohi bhukta prakriti jana. As long as we have the desire, or as long as we are in connect or in association of prakriti, or we have the desire to enjoy prakriti, till that time we'll continue to have different yonis like that. How to get free of this? How to attain our eternal nature? We have to change our conceptions. That begins with hearing. That's the discussion so far. Now, somebody may say, I do not agree. I am the controller, proprietor of all I survey. I challenge. Prove me wrong. I am the one who I make a decision. Anyone doctor here by any chance? Okay, let me ask this way. Any one of you have gone to hospital ever? Have you ever had to get operated yourself, or you had any of your family member get operated? Anyone like that? Now, if in case of that have ever happened, the patient who's supposed to get operated, he has to sign a paper, legal document, saying that this is my damn body. I mean, this is not what it says. I'm just paraphrasing it. This is my damn body. I am the owner of this body, and I give the right to this doctor to play with it, experiment with it. And if in case in the course of his play time with my body, if my body gets damaged, he will not be held responsible. The hospital will not be held responsible for it. This is the raw language of it, which is very polished way, would be written in a legal language, etc., etc. Right? Some of you can relate to it. In other words, the laws of this land, this is a legal document. The laws of the land says, this is my body. I am the controller. I don't agree to all this thing. Well, there is something interesting Krishna says. Krishna बोलते हैं, रुक, तेरे को बताता हूँ, कौन मालिक है इसका? देखो क्या कहते हैं. One of the favorite verses, 30 chapter verse 23. उपद्रष्टानुमन्ता च भर्ता भोक्ता महाईश्वरः Paramatmeti chapi yukto dehe asmin purusha paraha. Okay, let me ask a question, then I'll get into this. The law of the land says I'm the controller, I'm the not controller, I'm the owner of the body, and then owner of the body means you're the controller, proprietor, and joy. That all follows like that. So if I am the owner of the body, then it means I should have the control on the body, isn't it? So who is managing our heartbeat? How many of you are consciously aware of your heartbeat? How many of you are actually personally managing and organizing your the functioning of your lungs, kidneys? अरे वो सब तो छोड़ो, सबका डाइजेशन खराब है, सबको कॉन्स्टिपेशन का प्रॉब्लम रहता है आज की तारीख में. We have so many diet restriction, what not. इतना कुछ होने के बाद ये व्यक्ति को लगता है I am the controller. This is called illusion. Think about it. So how does it all function? How does this whole body is operating? That's a big subject matter, but to put it in a nutshell, let me put it a little technically in a Sankhya language. Now we are spirit soul, are put into this matter. Now spirit and matter, how does it coincide? How does it correlate? Because they're two opposite nature. According to modern science, we spoke about it over here probably. There's something called as particle and antiparticle, material, antimaterial. 1959, two physicists got Nobel Prize for this concept of particle and antiparticle. They're entirely opposite. And a particle and antiparticle have to come together. Even a 1 gram of this antiparticle, the sun, the research lab in Switzerland, which is all around Switzerland, which is actually trying to produce this antiparticle. The 1 gram of antiparticle costs more than $1 trillion. If this 1 gram of antiparticle is released in the environment, the whole of New York City, the size of New York City, would be put to ashes within few minutes. According to their understanding of science, antiparticle and particle comes together, it leads to explosion. So we are antiparticle, so super soul, Jivatma. And how this antiparticle has been put in touch with particle. And that has been a subject of research and debate for ages together. This is called as body-mind problem, which was first coined by a French scientist in the early 18th century by the name of Descartes. He coined this French body-mind problem. So how does this, mind according to the Western thinkers is soul, is according to them is not soul, is according to them is spiritual, which is, non-perceivable. So any thoughts, how does this spirit interact with the body? Yes, Nitai Pran Prabhu. You only answer if you have not heard my mind management series, huh? Those who attended my should not answer. Yes, go ahead.
Is through the subtle body, Prabhu?
Oh, subtle body is also the matter only, na? A subtle body is also modes of material nature only. It's the same thing.
Okay.
So how does a soul and body functions together? According to science, soul is antiparticle, body is particle. Put together leads to massive explosion. And I give you the value of market cost of 1 gram of antimatter, $1 trillion. If in case you're able to extract soul, you can sell it and you'll get this much amount. So how does it function? Nobody is able to decode this answer. Researchers are working hard day and night to figure it out. What's the answer for it? Yes, Mother Chintamani, what would you think? What would you suggest?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, the consciousness of the soul flows through the mind into the nerves and all into the different parts of the body.
Yeah, so that's our standard statement. Soul is the soul is R-O-O-T, root of consciousness. Mind is R-O-U-T-E, root of consciousness. But how does it? What is the correct? You're in the right direction. But how does it still happen? How this whole communication still happens? There has to be something for the communication to occur, right? There has to be, some electrodes, some registers, etc., an electronic machine to have the communication happen.
Like the super soul?
Now, how do you say super soul?
Yeah, I mean, under the direction of the super soul, all this is happening.
Okay, you're correct actually. It is just like taking out all other options. Okay, we're left with super soul only now. Finally, settle with super soul, nothing else. There is nothing else. Well, that's correct. You're left with the right option. That's what text number 23 talks about it. Upadrashta anumanta cha bharta bhokta ma Ishwara. Upadrashta. Upadrashta means upadrashti, drishti, overseer. Upadrashta anumanta cha. Anumanta means permitter. It is a super soul. You know, permitter means he gives the permission. So all this body soul interaction is possible only because of the permission of the super soul. And super soul says, okay, bhai, tera ho gaya. तूने भाड़ा नहीं बढ़ाया, निकल यहाँ से. When the super soul decides to kick you out, that is called as death. Body is there, soul is there. Why they are not functioning together now? Now, some of you, most of you, are already married here. You probably have mothers also. Think scientifically, logically, what did mother, father do as such in about bringing about the life? I mean, of course, there is a whole physical aspect happens, but we know that it is soul. None of us inserted soul in the body, right? If we did not insert soul in the body, then who takes out the soul out of the body? So how is it functioning? Upadrashta anumantacha. And that is karmana deva netrena jantu deho utpatte. All right, I hope this makes sense. परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तो, और वो कौन है? उसको परमात्मा कहा जाता है. देह अस्मिन् पुरुषा परा, and he also resides within this body. He is known as Purusha. Paraha. कैसा पुरुष है? He is a transcendental Purusha. So there are two Purushas. Aparaha Purusha and Para Purusha. All right, so that's the point here. You can read this beautiful purport. Okay, let's read the first paragraph, last few lines, so you'll get the gist what I'm speaking. Nitai Pran Prabhu, read from the first paragraph, the first paragraph, middle. The individual source enjoys the activities of a particular field. If in case you're able to locate.
Yeah, I'm able to find it now. Yeah.
Go ahead.
The individual soul enjoy the activities of a particular field, but the super soul is present not as finite enjoyer, nor as one taking part in bodily activities, but as the witness, overseer, permitter, and supreme enjoyer. His name is Paramatma, not Atma, and he is transcendental. It is distinctly clear that the Atma and the Paramatma are different. The super soul, the Paramatma, has legs, hands everywhere, but the individual soul does not. And because the Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, he is present within to sanction the individual soul's desiring material enjoyment. Without the sanction of the Supreme Soul, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual is Bhukta, and the sustain, and the Lord is Bhokta, or the maintainer. There are innumerable living entities, and he is staying in them as a friend. The fact is that every individual living...
Continue, very important.
The fact is that every individual living entity is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and both of them are very intimately related as friends. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate nature. And because he has this tendency, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. As long as he is conditioned by the material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the super soul, stays with him just to get him to return to the spiritual energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instruction from within and from without.
All right. Yeah. That's a point we have discussed this. So, all right. This is clear. Now comes the 24th verse. What will I gain if I understand all this? So Krishna offers a benediction. Ya evam veti purusham prakritim cha gunhe saha sarvata vartamanopi nasa bhuyopi jayate. Read the translation with Abraham Prabhu.
One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of material and the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position.
Fourth line of the purport.
This is the result of knowledge.
Correct.
The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. By his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly person, and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad Gita as it is explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge.
So how do I understand the super soul? Text number 25. Dhyanena atmani pashyanti kechit atmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Through dhyana yoga, through jnana yoga and karma yoga. Translation please.
Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires.
Text number 26. Yet there are another way of understanding the super soul. Anyetu evam ajananta shrutavyanebhya upasate te api chati tananti eva mrityum shruti parayanaha. Shruti parayanaha. Those who are inclined to hear. Please go ahead.
Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they are transcendent the path of birth and death. They also transcend the path of birth and death.
Purport.
This verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society, there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheist or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. And for the common man, if he is good soul, then there is a chance of advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress of hearing because if the common man,
because of the common simply hears, then he can progress. Go ahead in the purport. From the bottom, you'll find again 6th, 7th last line. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one needs to change his position.
Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one need to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow his footsteps, one will gradually elevate it to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to the Godhead, back to home.
Hare Krishna. So the subject matter kind of concludes here in terms of, how do we understand about soul and super soul is through hearing. One who understands this, text number 24 talks about he will not take birth again. And, there are laws of the material nature that governs the body. It is super soul by which the desires of the soul are fulfilled, etc., etc. So 27 to 35, they're close to 8 verses. We'll take a break now. Close to 8 minutes is around 1:29. So which means we can come back around what? 1:35, we can say 6 minutes. We come back at 1:35, we'll resume our discussion and then we'll finish the remaining 8 verses. Until then, we pause here. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jita Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathannitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhannitam Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Bhajasi Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right, taking a look at the presentation now. So, why do bad things happen to good people? So, okay, I will need a presentation for that. Okay. How do I show the presentation? Okay, give me a second till our devotee come back. We'll take it forward. So, okay, let's read that. We'll continue our discussion. Hare Krishna. All right, yeah. So we discussed about the first thing about the enjoyer. Now the second concept which is highlighted through Prabhupada purpose and discussion is why do bad things happen to good people. We saw that. 20th verse talks about Purusha Prakrti. What is that? 20th. Prakritim Purusham Jaiva Vidyanadi Bhavavi. So both material nature and living entities are eternal. Factual Purusha is the Lord, but the Jiva is trying to usurp that position. Because of interaction with the material nature, we are going through the reactions for it, punishment. Then next question asks us, what is the purpose of material creation? We saw that Prabhupada writes in the purport, to give rebellious Jiva a chance to reform his behavior and return back to the spiritual world. The Jiva in this world, cause and effect, material nature, nothing happens by chance, as propagated by some scientists. The victim mentality doesn't work. Every effect has a cause. So what is the actual cause? Okay, what is the actual cause? We'll talk about it. The actual cause is the individual, in the sense of the desire. Now what happens when, Hare Krishna, Prabhu, what happens when we propagate propagate a random theory, which means, there's no cause, all happening by chance, it leads to atheism, as there is no superior control. That's what it means. Then everyone tries to be the controller, that is, science can defeat death. Gradually leads to widespread misery and destruction. The Second World War, Mussolini, who supported Hitler, in fact, Hitler also, it is said by many historians that both Hitler and Mussolini were greatly influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution, where they consider their race to be the superior race, whereas others to be inferior. And because survival of the fittest becomes the rule of existence, they thought we should get rid of this inferior class, and that's how they came to the conclusion. So gradually leads to widespread misery and destruction, and ultimately people stop inquiring about the cause. So what happens when we propagate this random theory or chance? So however, Lord says here, every individual is responsible for their situation. 8.4 million species exist to fulfill different sensual pleasures of Jiva. What all we can think of, it all got covered within this 8.4 million species. Our desire and past activities determine our present situation. And for this, we have a classic case study in the first canto Srimad Bhagavatam, when Parishit Maharaj went out to see how his kingdom was doing. There he came across the bull whose legs were broken, the cow who was crying piteously, and it turned out to be the bull was none other than Dharma. And there he saw somebody dressed as a Kshatriya, protector of the kingdom, was actually causing or was hurting and killing the cow and the bull. And then Parishit Maharaj, before giving a verdict of punishment to that culprit, he asked the bull, who is responsible? And a very fantastic discussion comes about who is responsible for one's condition. There is nothing like victim. Therefore, we should stop blaming and take responsibility of our life. Where is my freedom? Well, there is no question of freedom, because the body that we try to enjoy is also governed by the laws of nature. We are influenced by the nature. I am dependent. What are the functions of super soul? Overseer, permitter, and supreme enjoyer. Upadrashta Anumantacha. So either we are governed by the laws of material nature, or else we depend on the super soul for his permission for any action to perform. The Jiva is not independent. And the concept was three doers. This is just indicate for it. So the soul desires, super soul sanctions, and then Prakriti carries out the order of the super soul and let the body perform that particular action. This is a three doer. And this was a relationship which we have discussed before. Jiva only has the freedom to desire. Ishwara, as a permitter, evaluates the desire based on your past actions. And if in case you fulfill the criteria of karmic account, karmic balance, then Ishwara sanction. Ishwara is said to be neutral. He does not evaluate good and bad. It's a system designed in such a way, whatever you desire, if in case you have the criteria, you have the credit, then it gets fulfilled like that. And if it is sanctioned, then Prakriti is given indication, and Prakriti facilitate the desire to fructify into an action, and then an individual performs an action. So Jiva temporarily becomes happy, but desire is not satisfied. He wants more and more, and therefore frustration continues. What if when the desire is not fulfilled? When the desire is not fulfilled, still he is frustrated. So that's all. Either way, if our material desire is fulfilled, we are frustrated because ye dil mange more. When the desire is not fulfilled, we are frustrated. So the end result is, or the conclusion is, as long as we are aspiring for material happiness, we will always be frustrated. The result of knowledge is to become free from this bondage. And how to understand? That was discussion 25 and 26, the process of hearing. Now comes Bhakti is the easiest. Yes, Bhakti is the easiest. Why? It takes shelter of your devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps. We just saw that verse, right? Text number 26. So what we need to create is a culture of hearing. Machchitta madgata prana bodhiyanta parasparam. We need to come together, inspire each other to hear about Krishna from the bona fide authority. And what is the result of hearing? Our conception changes. Hearing, from hearing comes knowledge, and from knowledge comes transcendental vision. And what is the vision of a transcendentalist? That has been described from verses 27 to 35. Let's take a look at those verses, and then we'll come back to this slide deck again. Hare Krishna. Text number 27. So I'll be a little quick now, so your attention will be a little desired, so you can catch it. Text number 27. Yava sanjayate kinche sattvam sthavara jangamam kshetra kshetrajna samyogat tadvidhi bharata sava. Sanat Rishi Prabhu. All right. You'll be the reading partner for this translation. Start reading.
O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field.
In other words, whatever is created in this world is nothing but a combination of matter and living entity. You live in the apartment, you drive a car, you sit in a plane, whatever it is, it's just a combination of matter and spirit, isn't it? You will say, oh, Prabhuji, where is the spirit in this whole building? Well, there was a spirit behind who conceptualized the idea. It was a spirit who acted as an architect. It was a spirit who acted as a worker who carried the bricks. Isn't it a living entity? So anything, any transformation you see around, it only happens because of matter and spirit coming together. So according to science, they have come to this, at least this level of understanding. When particle and antiparticle comes together, it leads to destruction. But what it is mentioned here, when particle and antiparticle comes together, it leads to various forms. Vikar, many multiple kind of forms comes into existence, and that is all perceivable to us all around. That's the point here. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, please read the last 4 to 5 lines, Prabhu. The relationship between matter and nature.
The relationship between matter and nature is eternally going on, and this combination is affected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is the controller of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus, all these activities and manifestations takes place.
Who can see this as truth? Text number 28. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam paramishwaram vinasyassu avinashyantam iha pashyati sapashyati. Okay, Madhav Kripa, you are visible in front of me. Go ahead. Translation.
One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees.
Please read the first 5 lines of the purport.
Anyone who by good association can see 3 things combined together: the body, the proprietor of the body or individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, is actually in knowledge.
What are these 3 things?
Body, soul, and the friend of the individual soul is super soul.
Yeah. What is that verse? Bhokta Ram Yagatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwan Surdam Sarva Bhutana. Like that Prabhupada presented here. Correct. Continue.
Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, one cannot see these 3 things.
Hare Krishna. That's the point here. So how do we get to see this? How do we get the sight? Is only by association of those who have the sight. And how do we get the sangha of that? Tadvidi Panipatena. The same concept comes from like that. Okay? Text number 9. Samam Pashyan hi sarvatra samvasthitam Ishwaram nahinasti atmanatmanam tatuyati param gatim. Please read.
Okay. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus, he approaches the transcendental destination.
What does it mean? One who sees the super soul present within everyone does not degrade himself by his mind. Anyone would like to give a purport? Very beautiful point is mentioned here. Any thoughts on it? Rishikesh Prabhu, yes, go ahead. Your hand is up. Yes.
So shall I read the purport?
No, I'm not asking to
The
read the
living
purport. I
entity.
have a question. And the question is, Prabhupada says, one who sees the super soul equally present, one who sees the presence of the super soul of the Lord, Vidya Vinaya Samane Brahmaniko Yastini, such a person does not degrade himself by his mind. What does it mean?
I mean, what I understand is that, so this is the right vision actually, that we should see the super soul present in every, I mean,
But
every
correct.
being. So that is the,
That's
yes,
the right
and
vision,
from
but that
there we
doesn't
can
come
just
on our
calculate.
effort. Correct.
Right.
So if in case, let's put it this way, if we don't see it, then we degrade ourselves. So what does it mean? Shashank Prabhu, go ahead.
So it means like we fall to level of sense gratification using.
We fall to the level, you're getting close. What else? You're getting close, correct? What else? What else? Mother Chintamani?
We get back to the lusty desires.
Very close by, correct? What else? What else? Just a step further.
Because the mind only is the storehouse, one of the
Correct.
storehouse.
You just a step away. You're very close, right direction. Okay, Nithai Pran Prabhu?
No, because if we have that knowledge that there is a super soul, that we don't tend to be the controller. We know that there's someone else who's been controlling.
Okay, you're nearby. Mother Kamalika does not degrade himself by his mind. Yes.
We will like this. We will stop exploiting the nature.
Yes. Stop exploiting. We will stop. And why do we exploit? Because of envy. So what goes away? Because it's the reason I mean, all of you were correct. But I was looking for this particular exploitation happened because of envy. I was looking for that because we all are here in this world because of envy. And when we don't see the truth, the envy continues, and the outcome of the envy is exploitation, like that. So that's the point. All right. Text number 30. Prakriti vacha karmani kriyamanani sarvashah ya pashyati tatatmanam akrataram sapashyati. Rishikesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
30th verse translation.
Translation. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees.
So this all verses talking about what is the vision of transcendentalists. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. You see in the middle of the purport?
Right, yes.
Please read from there.
The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer.
Beautiful point. Body is a machine designed by the Lord to fulfill desires. Desires of whom? Soul. I know, that's the reason. Or soul or of the mind, call it actually. Text number 31. Yada bhut pratak bhavam ekastham anupashyati tataiva cha vistaram brahma sampadyate tada. Go ahead, translation.
Yes. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception.
Read the first few lines of the purport.
When one can see that the various bodies of living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself,
one actually sees. In the material conception of life, we find someone a demigod, someone a human being, a dog, a cat, etc. This is material vision, not actual vision. This material differentiation is due to a material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit soul is one.
Hare
The spirit
Krishna.
soul.
So this is a material vision, to see in different unis, and what to speak out, do caste discrimination. How much it is, even after becoming a devotee, then also we bring in caste factors. I'm gonna get married in my caste and this and all that. So this is all, of course, there has to be some practicality also about it in terms of, the matching of chart. But these are some ways we kind of we bring in our material vision, and we try to see distinctions and differentiations. So Prabhupada is talking different bodies. What about different bodies? Even within human species, we sometimes have our actions are governed by this material vision. Text number 32. Anaditva nirgunatva paramatmayam avyayah sharirostopi kaunteya na karoti na lipyate. Madhata and Gopika, please read.
Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled.
Papat.
A living entity appears to be born because of the birth of the material body, but actually the living entity is eternal. He is not born, and in spite of being situated in a material body, he is transcendental and eternal. Thus, he cannot be destroyed. By nature, he is full of bliss. He does not engage himself in any material activities. Therefore, the activities performed due to his contact with material bodies do not entangle him.
All right, text number 33. Yatha sarvagatam sukshmyad akasham nopalipyate sarvatravasthito dehe tatatma nopalipyate. Translation.
The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul, situated in Brahman vision, does not mix with the body, though situated in that body.
Papat.
The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else is there. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of body, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this.
Yeah, there is an analogy given here. Just like air enters into water, mud, and whatever else is there, still it does not mix with anything. That's the relationship between the body and soul. It is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with his body. Text number 34, another example. Yatha prakashyate ekaha krishnam lokam imam ravihi kshetram kshetri tatha krishnam prakashyate bharata. Continue.
O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness.
So the soul has been compared to the sun. Body is made up of matter. Matter means darkness. Just like this material world is full of darkness, but because of the presence of the soul, there is light all around. Similarly, because of the presence of sun, and similarly because of the presence of the soul within the body, so the body is put into action. And when the soul is driven away, the body again is go back to its inert nature like that. Please read the first few lines of the purport.
There are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and the sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit, soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by an intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the supreme consciousness, is not supreme, because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body, but the super soul, which is situated in all the bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. That is the difference between supreme consciousness and individual consciousness.
Hare Krishna. And we come to the last verse of this chapter. 1 second. Yeah. Text number 35. Kshetra kshetragnayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye viduyanti te param. Those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, kshetra kshetragya, can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So this is the Jnana Yoga section where bhakti is attained through the help of Jnana Yoga. In other words, it is the section which is essential to make progress in bhakti. So the subject matter of knowledge, the subject matter of the topics of knowledge which are discussed here, it helps one to detach oneself from the body. That is what is mentioned here. Those who see with the eyes of knowledge, jnana, the difference between the body, kshetra, and kshetragya, can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature. Papat, Mother Medhavani, please read.
This 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body, the owner of the body, and the super soul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verses 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the super soul. The soul and the super soul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the supreme soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Thus end Bhaktivedanta purports to the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Conclude with the presentation. So what is the vision of a transcendentalist? That is what the subject matter of the last 7-8 verses. The true seer. The true seer can distinguish between spirit and matter in our circumstances. Text number 27. Who is an actual seer? Who sees super soul and soul together. Text number 28. And he knows that only it is the body that acts, not the soul. What are the activities of the soul? The soul does nothing, nor does it mix with the body, but it does, however, illumine the body with consciousness. So the Jiva in this world. The tiny Jiva Purusha thinks he is the master. Are there any examples from your experiences or from Shastras where living entity thinks himself to be the master? And okay, these are questions. I know the time is up. You can do it later on. What is your experience of the importance of becoming a servant? Why is it important? How does it help? And there are some trivia. Okay, we can do this trivia quickly. How do you gonna do that? Because I'm gonna look at the slide deck. Maybe you can type in, or maybe you can just speak in. So let's go ahead. First question: what determines Jiva's next path?
Desire.
And past activity. Okay, everyone gets one chance, huh? Who provides 8.4 million species?
Material nature.
Correct, material nature. Why we came to this material world?
To enjoy without Lord.
To enjoy independently, or we became envious of the Lord. So we wanted envy or to desire. All right. Someone is born blind while another is born prodigy. Who is responsible?
Karma, prarabdha.
So I am responsible only, na?
Yes.
My past actions. So there's nothing called as victimization. A living entity is dependent on dash and dash.
On super soul and Prakriti, on super soul
Prakriti and super soul.
Yes. The body functions according to Prakriti and super soul sanctions. Correct. Congratulations. You have passed on from your exam in chapter number 13. The most complicated chapter. Fine. And then we meet next time. We'll discuss the 3 modes of material nature. Okay, if I am the doer and controller. The person think like this, but this mistaken belief is debunked in this chapter. We will now further study how we are dependent on Prakriti, how Prakriti influences us. A very, very beautiful chapter like that. So that's it for today. I feel elated to be able to complete this discussion only 7 minutes delayed. Hare Krishna. Any concluding thoughts or comments? Any questions on the subject matter? Looks like half of you have already gone for a lunch break. कुछ ही का कैमरा ऑन है, सबके कैमरे already off लग रहे हैं. Okay, so there are some hands up. I don't know, some hands are still up for reading. Just FYI, reading is over now. As you want to load on your hand, in case your hands are still up, then I'll call upon. Yes, Mother Chintamani, your hand is up. You want to say something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, I just wanted to know this mechanism. Now it is said that the consciousness is flowing through the mind. Now the mind usually, scientifically, they always point near the head, in this part of the body. Now, but we say the soul is near the region of the heart. And now, how is this? Now the consciousness is flowing through the mind to all parts of the body, to the nerves or whatever it is. And now, how is it going to the head? And then I just wanted to know this physical mechanism that works.
So, Prabhupada writes, I believe maybe we have read or we're going to read ahead in other purpose. The mind is not localized, is present all over the body. Just like consciousness is present all over the body. And for that, I generally discuss a case study of what you call as leprosy, right? Not leprosy, paralysis. Let's say somebody has got a paralysis in their left leg. The body, the physical form is there, the soul is there. Why there is paralysis? Why can't he move? So, upadrashtanumanta. So now the super soul is not giving permission for that part of the body to be active, which means now when you hit that part of the body, for example, if you have to just slap your right leg, it will give you some sensation, maybe a little pain or whatever it is. When somebody has got paralysis, now you smash that, it will not give you any sensation. Yes or no?
Yes.
So it means there is an absence of mind, because sukha dukkha is a function of mind. There is an absence of mind, there is absence of consciousness. So wherever there is a consciousness, there is a mind. So the consciousness is a symptom of soul, and that consciousness gets manifested with the external world through the medium of mind. So the mind is not localized, hence proven. Hare Krishna. It makes sense? kind of, you know, if you go in that logical pattern with an example of paralysis, that's what comes to conclusion.
Thank you.
Yes. Itai Pran Prabhu.
Prabhu, I have a question. It's related to verse number 34, where it's been said that the will determine the consciousness. Yeah. But what actually determines the quality and the quantity of
I don't know if my internet is poor or your internet is poor. Your voice is breaking. Your screen is also frozen right now. Okay, we lost you. Madaruni Gopika, go ahead.
Prabhu, so in one of the purports, like you explained, that Jiva desires and then Ishwara, on the basis of the karma credit, approves or rejects it and orders Prakriti. But then how to understand? It's just Ishwara is just approving or rejecting and not doing anything.
Oh yeah,
else.
Paramatma is, that's what Paramatma is neutral. And Lord Shri Krishna expresses that many times, that I got nothing to do with the good and the bad of the world. Paramatma, super soul is the authority where, just like we give an example, we saw that picture also, two birds are sitting on the branch of the body. So one is just overlooking at it. He's not affected by the results, good or bad. So there has to be somebody who permits. There has to be, if in case, therefore we talked about the quality of care also, responsible care and pampering. And there has to be detachment, and because, see, two things are there. One, we have been awarded free will, desire whatever you want. Second, we are dependent. We cannot fulfill those desires without being approved by the Lord. Now, if Lord only who has made the system where we have the free will to choose whatever we want, now we depend on the Lord only to fulfill those desires. If he does not take that role, where he just acts as a neutral party, then how can our free will can get exercised? The free will cannot get exercised. If it desires something and Lord says, no, you're not supposed to do this, then what is the meaning of free will? Therefore, the love, devotion has to be something which is born out of one's own will. It cannot be forced. The Lord cannot force. I mean, Lord can force, but Lord doesn't want to force, because then it violates the principle of Jiva's free will. Like that. So Paramatma is the function of the Lord, wherein he acts as a silent observer, and because Jivatma has, he has a free will and is always dependent. So to fulfill both the condition, the Lord has taken a form of super soul where he does not react to anything. You want good thing? Okay. You want bad thing? Okay. But who is the cause for good and bad both? Jivatma. No victimization. No victim mentality. I am responsible. How I am held responsible, and why I am held responsible for that? Lord created law of karma, so that there has to be a mechanism by which we get reprimanded. There has to be a feedback system. You can see karma as a feedback system. There has to be, because super soul doesn't talk to us. Even if super soul talks, we will not understand. There has to be a feedback system. So criticism, which means we did something wrong. Praise, which means we did something right. So the law of karma acts kind of a feedback system. So we get to know, oh, I should not do this thing, otherwise I'll get punished. Like that, the law has been created to reform us, to direct us in the right path. All right?
Yeah, so Prabhu, like in further continuation, but we also hear and understand for the devotees, when they desire something, and even if they have the credit or don't have credit, but Lord approves it or grants it if it is good for the devotee. So in that case, this law of karma is not
correct. So now here we have to have a little more deeper understanding. When we talk about devotee, it has to be seen in the context. What devotee? When you're talking about Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, Uttamadhikari, it is only for Uttamadhikari where Lord, takes control of the life. Vacho vegam, manasakrodha vegam, jiva vegam, udharupashta vegam, etan veganyu vishaheta dhira, pratvim sashishyat. Like that was NOI text one. And the purport writes, when a devotee surrenders himself to the Supreme Lord and gives control of his life in the hands of the Lord, then Lord, because the living entity desired, then Lord takes charge of his senses and does not allow his senses to get distracted. But begins from where? I proving it to the Lord that I want you to do it. So we give control of our life in the hands of the Lord, and when the Lord takes control of life, then the senses of the devotee cannot get distracted. So when we say that, whatever the point you were making about in the life of a devotee, there is no one devotee. There are gradations of devotees. So whenever we talk about in terms of context devotees, we have to understand what gradation of devotee we are talking about, or else what gradation of devotee has been discussed when it has been spoken in the purports. All right.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Nitai Pranpu, you seem to be back online.
Yeah, Prabhu. Sorry, something has gone wrong with my Zoom. So the question that I was asking is mainly from the verse 34, which we just read. And the verse 34 says that when the soul is present in the body, there is a consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. But my question is that what basically determines the quality and the quantity of the consciousness? Because we have seen the different level of a species have got a different consciousness. Even though the soul is present.
That depends on the body. If you have a human body, there's a certain amount of consciousness, and you have the opportunity to cultivate that consciousness to its full capacity. Anamaya, Manamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya. Right? But when you're put into a lower species of life, you remain in that level of consciousness all through your body, all through your lifetime. So the quantity or quality depends on what body have you got.
But Prabhu, that there is a line which has been written over here in the same verse. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combination of matter. So that means body, which is a combination of body.
It is not a combination because it's spiritual. But how much of it will manifest is determined. And how it is determined? I mean, there are different levels of body kind of organized by the laws of nature. And the laws of nature are not acting independently. They are working, Devi Ishugunamai, which means is directed by the Lord. Now the living entities are also the part and parcel of the Lord. So ultimately it is who? Upadrashta Anumantacha. It is, here there is not a role of Paramatma. In that way, yes, there is a role of Paramatma, but the system is designed such a way, somebody is put into a tree body. Only this much amount of consciousness would be manifested. It's defined. So when you get this is what going to manifest. Who designed? See, Prakriti, you say tree is given, the tree form is given by the Prakriti. Spirit is part and parcel of the Lord, but the point is Prakriti is also part and parcel of the Lord. Who has designed the system is designed by the Lord himself. And the system is such, tree would have this much, lion would have this much, human will have this much. When the child is born, he's completely ignorant. But in the human life, as compared to all of the species, the human form has a prerogative and advantage where they can cultivate the consciousness to the fullest. Therefore, Prabhupada quoted the Tatri Upanishad, talking about the 5 levels of consciousness.
Okay, so then, but to conclude this, so even what percentage of a consciousness we are going to get is determined from what activities we have performed in the current body or in the previous body. Yeah?
I would put it this way: the kind of body you are given, it is already established how much amount of your consciousness can be manifested. That way, for tree is very dull. For animals is large yet anamaya consciousness. Maybe different animals could have it because different animals in goodness, passion, ignorance. If in ignorance, it is generally anamaya consciousness. In passion, it could be pranamaya. I mean, this has not been classified like that, but everything is classified according to the modes. A manifestation episode can be done like that. So according to the body you get, to that degree, your consciousness gets manifested. Therefore, in human, when there is a human birth, tapasa, brahmacharina, shamena cha, damena cha, the training is needed. Why the training is needed? So that your full consciousness can blossom.
So even in this current birth as well, we are not able to get to know our full consciousness unless we get into this subject matter of Krishna consciousness.
So what is the full level of consciousness? There are 5 levels which are described. Anamaya, just eating. Pranamaya, just worried about the self. Then Jnanamaya, then Vijnanamaya, and then Anandamaya. In Anandmaya, where you have developed a relationship with the Lord. That's where the full manifestation of the consciousness is visible, like that. That's a complete growth of the consciousness when we have realized our relationship with the Absolute Truth. Prior to that is impersonalism, Jnanamoy. I have understood I'm in the body but spirit. So not understood, I have realized it. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma stage. And then Jnanamoy, where we have got certain amount of understanding how to play around with the matter, etc., etc. Where there is some kind of intellectual gratification, like that.
Thank you, Prabhu. So just one more question, if you allow, Prabhu. So it's mainly related to that desire, because I always find this subject matter to be quite challenging and difficult to understand. So what basically initiate the desires? Although we know that Krishna has given us a free will, but still I find it difficult to understand that what initiates the desires.
What initiates desires against Krishna?
Well, if anything, for anything, let's say, maybe
See,
it's for
the nature
Krishna
of
or
the
for...
soul is to desire. So what initiates, the question doesn't arise is because that's your nature. Your nature is not to be dull like a dead matter. Your nature is to desire. Now, so first of all, so that question itself becomes invalid because there cannot be any time stamp to it, because that's your nature. Now imagine you begin to ask, Prabhu, when does the living entity start to breathe? When you're breathing, only then you're alive. I mean, if you are dead, then there is no question of breathing. So if you are Jivatma, which means you're desiring, there is no meaning of you being Jivatma if you're not desiring. All right?
Okay, so that means we've been ever desiring. That's...
Yeah, we are. Therefore, variegatedness is the mother of all enjoyment. Look at what variegatedness, I've not read, but I've heard of it. The Srimati Radharani does not repeat the menu.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine how much Krishna desired, love to eat nice items. I'm just making a point. So that's short. Why it is said Chintamani? Because all our desires get fulfilled, right? Kalpa Vriksha, what is that? To fulfillment of all desires. Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya. Why we say all Vaishnavas Vanchakalpa? Because they can fulfill all your desires. Right? It's all about desires. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much for questions and answers, bro.
Yes, Mother Chintamani.
Prabhuji, I wanted to ask him, Lord is the sanctioning authority, and unless he sanctions as per our karmic balance, nothing is, the further things, even if we desire, it doesn't fulfill. So now, now sometimes our desires or anybody's desire is not fulfilled by the Lord. But then what happens to people who are serial killers or who do such wrong activities? How is it sanctioned?
Let me put it this way. Let me give an example. Imagine somebody lives in Jammu and he decides to come on vacation to, let's say, Kolhapur, Bombay, Maharashtra, and he's driving his car. Let's say there is another family and they begin the journey from Bombay and they are kind of also coming to Kolhapur. And let's say they both come and intersect at a place called as Pune, because from Pune there is a Kolhapur expressway that takes you to Kolhapur. Both of these people have come from different places, have no relationship, no idea. But as soon as they reach Pune, they have a head-on car collision. Now, both the parties die. A question could have been raised if, in case, according to the karma, the family which started driving from Jammu had to die. Why they had to travel all this while to get to die? They could have died in Jammu only. Similarly, the family who started to drive the car from Bombay, why they had to die, meet a car accident in Pune? There are hundreds and thousands of reasons for meeting a car accident before. This is how karma brings. Or let's say one party dies, one party survives. The party who dies is the one who had a karma of receiving death in this lifetime through car accident. And the party who was in a car accident, who was responsible for car accident, of course, I would not say they are not culprit, but the party who has received the karma has to see that the person who gave me is an instrument of my karma. So therefore, for chapter Krishna says very intricate. It's not easy. We fail to understand easy subject. What will understand the difficult subject? It's a very intricate subject of karma. So if there is a serial killer, he wants to kill somebody. Now he goes around and kill 4 to 5 people like that, or maybe let's say a dozen of girls, or maybe youths like that. Let's say he has killed some 20 odd kids. It becomes a serial killer by the definition. Now, who are those people who got killed? Now, it's not that the population of Pune only had 40 kids or 25 kids, out of which 20 kids got killed. There are so many kids. But why only those 20 kids? Because they were carrying their karma. Now, we have to be careful. We don't speak like this when we are at condolence meet or something like that. But what's the philosophy behind it? Well, it was their karma. Nothing is happening by chance. It was their karma. And this guy was the instrument of the fulfillment of karma. But because he has performed a sinful activity, he also must have had a desire for it. Therefore, so that he does not suffer in his future life, he should be given capital punishment immediately. He should be hanged. If he is hanged to death, because he caused death to somebody else and he is hanged to death, then he gets free from his karma. Otherwise, in his next life, he would be killed and the cycle continues. So today's law and order is actually disrupting the natural law and order, causing havoc by not giving the appropriate punishment that an individual deserves. All right, Mother?
Yes, thank you so much.
Padma Govind Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, in one of the verses, while giving importance for the process of hearing, it is also stated that one need not change his position. What exactly does that mean, Prabhuji? Changing of position?
I mean, Grahe Thako, Vane Thako, Sada Hari Thako. So, in other words, what happens in, let's say, Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, you have to really give up a lot of things. You have your family life, you have your profession, so many things. So in Krishna consciousness, in Bhakti Marg, things are made so simple, you don't have to change anything. Stay wherever you are, hear about Krishna, chant about Krishna. That's the point. We don't have to really spend our time and energy changing our circumstances, situation, or whatnot. Nothing. You're a professional, continue to be a professional. But add remembrance of Krishna. Manmana Bhava Madbhakta Madhyajimam Namaskuru. That's a step one. And then increase the remembrance of Krishna by remembering that the work that you do is a service to Lord. How do you do it? Dedicate the results of work, to begin with some part of it, to the service of the Lord. And then gradually as you grow up, dedicate your whole actions in the service of the Lord. In fact, take up the service of the Lord. I'm going to now serve the Lord. I'll become the puja in the temple. I'll become the manager. I'll become temple president, whatnot. Like that, our service contribution keeps on increasing without changing our situation.
Okay.
That's what it means, okay?
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So here we conclude. Looks like we have taken. Okay. Mother Kishore Rani, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. You said that the Lord always sanctions our desires, whether it is right or wrong.
Not always. It is Lord sanctions, not always. Hare Krishna. So looks like she's probably.
I'm traveling. Yeah, I'm traveling, so sometimes the network issue is there.
So in that case, Mother, you can send me a message. I'll reply over there, okay? Because the signal is kind of breaking now. You send me a message, I'll reply over there. All right, Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining in for today's discussion. Jagduru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. When we meet next time, next Saturday, right? We're meeting next Saturday, correct?